Welcome to INN CEO Talks. Today I'm joined by Chris Frostad of Purepoint Uranium. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Stuart. Good to be here.
You know, you're in the uranium market, which I find to be a bit of a conundrum these days, because when we look at the fact that prices have been pretty much flat for the last 18 months, uranium equities have drifted down, and for some reason, which I don't quite understand, and maybe this is the conundrum part, optimism for uranium from investors and analysts remains high. Why do you think that is? What's going on?
Oh, well, I guess there's a few things. I mean, I think it's the fact that the underlying premise beneath the industry still holds. The fundamentals are strong, and that comes from the fact that the oversupply of uranium that we saw for years has now diminished. So we see that supply-demand balance coming back into play. We're also seeing that the price is still low. So as much as about 3 years ago we saw uranium prices start to jump and equities jumped after them, they've pretty much been sitting flat, like you say, for the last probably 12 to 16 months. Right now, I think we're at $58 a pound uranium, and the incentive price to open up a new mine is in the range of $70 to $80. So at $58, we're still pretty much short of that. As I say, to those of us in mining, it might as well be $20 if it's just $58. So we know that price has to rise in order to really start turning things back on again. And I think finally you're looking at a real resurgence in nuclear in general, right around the planet. It's really come back strong as a source of green energy, much more so than it was viewed at 10, 15 years ago. So we're seeing a lot more reactors being built, so that we're seeing that demand side really start to pump up. So as far as the markets are concerned, as far as people that follow uranium and believe that we're about to move back into a time of upward swing, I think it's based on that. We see a real supply-demand shift happening, and hopefully it'll happen quickly.
How important is it from your perspective that in the United States, of course, the current administration and even under the previous one, there was this sense that there had to be secure North American supply for essential elements like uranium. Is that playing a role as well?
Oh, certainly. We're seeing a number of countries with new strategies around critical elements, rare earth, lithium, and uranium. As we see a lot of the politics come into play, particularly an issue such as Russia, the war over with Russia, and Russia being a significant supplier of uranium, and not just that, but a significant processor of uranium. So as countries are trying to sort out their sanctions, they realize that they really do need to get more domestic control over access to a lot of these minerals. Rare earths is another one similar to that, where the Chinese control almost 90% of the world's production. And as these elements become more important to keeping the lights on, if you will, a lot of countries like Europe and the United States are really putting a lot of time, money, effort, and policy behind strengthening up their domestic access.
What's your sense of when we're going to see that next demand for uranium? And then how does that intersect with where Purepoint is at in its ability to move forward with mine site development?
Sure. Well, again, the issue around uranium supply, it's a small market. When it moves, it seems to move quickly in either direction. And one of the outstanding issues is when that supply and demand issue is going to really hit a tipping point. I think 3 years ago we saw the markets believe that that's where we were heading, and we saw a lot of the equities take off for about 16 months. We saw Sprott get into the business of obtaining physical uranium, and we saw a lot of other countries, a lot of other funds doing similar sort of actions. But it's kind of leveled off, and I think what we're going to see in the next, I would say the next 6 to 12 months is we're really starting to come out of that. I mean, we've really hit hit the bottom of the cycle. I think right now, from an equity standpoint, I think we're seeing a lot more, or hearing about a lot more long-term contracts being written. Most of these are off market, therefore we really don't know what the price is being negotiated at, but we know that market is getting stronger and stronger. So as there becomes more transparency in what that price is, I think it's going to reflect well on the equities, and we're going to see another run like we saw 3 years ago.
Well, you touch on that run 3 years ago. There was, good upside for many in the uranium market. Many of those gains have been drawn back since then, except for a couple of companies, and Purepoint being one of them. What's the difference with Purepoint? How have you been able to maintain your position?
Well, I think there's there's a couple of elements that come into play there. I mean, first off, a lot of the newer companies that come into the space, particularly in Saskatchewan where we are, because there's a real high reward when you actually make a discovery out there. But a lot of these companies really have smaller portfolios. They've got one or two projects that they're really wrapping themselves around. It's in many cases almost a bit of a Hail Mary. We've got a much larger portfolio of projects at various stages of advancement. Therefore, we always have things moving forward. This isn't a quick game, a quick hit. There's a lot of work that comes into it, and so that's an important aspect of it. And those projects can't just be greenfield as well in theories. I mean, you have to have projects that have real prospectivity and that have demonstrated that there is in fact there is the prospect for a major discovery. Two of our projects we joint venture with Cameco and Orano, and they invest very heavily in those projects with us, alongside of us, and that sort of validates. It justifies the fact that it's not just us that thinks that these are important projects and have the potential for large discovery. The other thing is people and resources. It's having enough work and keeping them active so that you can retain them for a long time. To try and find a crew of geologists to work on a project for 3 months and then go away is difficult. And we've had our staff. We've got a solid team that's been working with us for years and on these projects for years, and that's important because they know what they're looking at. And the other thing is relationships. Be it with service providers trying to get access to drilling and geophysics and all the things you need on a regular basis. Relationships with the government, the province for permitting and activity there. We sit on the board of the Saskatchewan Mining Association. That gives us access to a lot of relationships on that front. And then, finally with the communities and First Nations in the area. We have relationships with many communities right across the province. So that's important as well. So I think, you've got to be in business to stay in business. You've got to be able to ride the wave. You've got to be able to ride the ups and the downs and make sure that, because again, none of this stuff happens overnight. And you've got to make sure that your ability to ride the ups and the downs is solid in there. And I think Purepoint's been very successful in that.
One last point. Maybe you can touch on Saskatchewan as a mining jurisdiction. Some areas you go, okay, getting our way through the permitting process and being able to function and operate. But Saskatchewan's got a very impressive record.
It does. It's got a very excellent reputation globally as a mining jurisdiction, and it has very mature regulations around mining and around exploration. Solid systems of staking and claiming and working through the permitting system. So it's very well understood, and they're very mining friendly. So you don't find a lot of policy changes that are sending people one way or the other. So it's an excellent place to work, and I've run projects in many other countries, and there's a number of good countries, but Saskatchewan's always the best from my perspective. It's a joy to work there because it is very, very supportive and resource friendly.
A takeaway that for viewers right now that they should be looking at in the next 3 to 6 months when examining Purepoint.
Sure. Well, we've got our primary project is Hook Lake. It sits out on the west side of the basin. It's a an area that has seen a lot of discovery over the last 10 years. Fission's Triple R deposit, Next Gen Zero deposit. We sit right alongside there, and our partners Cameco and Orano hold the 2/3 of that joint venture there. We're last winter we were opening up into a new area that we think is very prospective. It's a very large area, and we did an initial drill program there, and it looks like we are starting to come into something very exciting, where we saw a lot of the mineralization and the other indicators that would prompt us to think that we've seen this before. And we're getting very excited about that. So we will be putting together our proposals and our budgets with our partners over the coming couple of months, and that will be a first course of action in the new year. We're also looking at our Smart Lake project, which is another joint venture with Cameco. They've requested a fairly significant proposal for work done out there. And then alongside of that, as we hope to see the market start to improve in the fall, we'll be looking to raise additional funds so we can really get back to some of our other projects. As I mentioned before, we've got a significant portfolio of projects, all of which have demonstrated a lot of potential, and we're anxious to get back out to those as well. So we've got things lined up, and we can work as hard as our investors will let us.
Great time to be looking at Purepoint Uranium. Chris, thanks for your time today.
Thank you very much.